Has he been demonized by the media? Yes. I was with David Hopp last night, and he just celebrated the fact that they had helped do this to David Williams. And that just points up the fact that the Kentucky media is the Courier-Journal. If it had a policy much more like Wall Street Journal, they could have chosen to demonize Steve Beshear. Instead of the bully from Burkesville, you'd have the weasel from Western Kentucky. And they make the choices about what stories are going to be covered, what the headlines are, what the photos are, where they're going to be placed, what the editorial policy is going to be. And they have decided they don't like David Williams because he's a threat as a progressive Republican with ideas. Now, quickly, I've pointed out in a column that it's funny, the Democrat here is the conservative. Steve Beshear's running on a platform of absolutely nothing, no change. That's generally the conservative approach. David Williams has put out a detailed platform with all the important issues: tax reform, public pension reform, education reform. He's out there. People say, oh, we wish candidates would put out their ideas and run on the issues. Well, that's exactly what David Williams has done, and he's down by 30%. So don't you believe it. Steve Beshear may be the perfect governor for Kentuckians. Kentuckians are, and I'm one of them, I don't say this with any pride, but we're unhealthy generally, we're ignorant generally, we're lazy. And he may be the perfect governor for them because he demands and expects absolutely zero. So everybody's kind of just content with the status quo caretaker regime. And when you're behind from the beginning like Kentucky is, you really can't afford that. But that's where we're headed.
Well, we certainly have more than our share of unhealthy people, and more than our share of ignorant people, and more than our share of lazy people. And that does add itself to the character of the body politic and what people want out of a governor or their public officials. But I don't think they're quite as complacent as you think. And I think the race is going to close up somewhat. Before I explain why, I want to make one other point about Williams's image. I can't think of a legislator who has been elected governor except Julian Carroll, who moved from Speaker of the House to Lieutenant Governor in the last, God, how long? Well, of course, Wendell Ford was a state senator very briefly, 2 years. Legislators can't play executive. You know, David Williams can't get on television and play Chris Christie. He doesn't have the bully pulpit. He doesn't have the reason to do it. He doesn't have the access to the media. And in New Jersey, you got two media houses. Basically, you got Philadelphia and New York. And in this state, we have 10, count them, 10 different designated market areas for television. 5 or 6 major ones, only one entirely within the state. So we have a fragmented kind of media, and I would really discount the influence of the Courier-Journal anymore. The Courier-Journal has ceased to become a statewide newspaper. Now, some other papers and media do take their cues from it, but that is increasingly not the case. And a lot of those papers like to play contrary, like the Paxton papers in Western Kentucky, Owensboro, Madisonville, Paducah. They pride themselves in being a fine mouthpiece for Senator McConnell. They do a good job of it, and he curries favor with them because he knows that's where his political bread is buttered. So it's not like David Williams has all the media cards against him. He's done a lot of things in his career that have rubbed people the wrong way, and not all publicly. You know, people will tell you stories about people they brought to David Williams as contributors, people who wanted to write him checks for the campaign, and he basically dismissed them, didn't show the sort of regard that you're supposed to show for people who are willing to write you a check. And that kind of thing just lingers. So I think he's caused himself a lot of problems. But why do I think this race might close up? Well, look at what happened in West Virginia yesterday.
That's precisely why it's over.
That's why it's over. Well, you can counter that. Here you had an acting governor, a Senate president, as you have it, running for an unexpired term. He started out with a 30-point lead. He won by 2. And the last ad that the Republican Governors Association ran said, "Stop Earl Ray Tomblin from implementing Obamacare." Why do you think we don't have a health insurance exchange set up in this state yet? You know, as part of the federal health care reform law, we're one of like 11 states that hasn't done a thing because Steve Beshear doesn't want an ad like that run against him. And Williams has been really short of money. The National Republican establishment has no confidence in his ability to win, so, you know, there's been no money in here, but all of a sudden, in the last week, we see some money. You know, fairly big television buy by some outfit called Restore America. Who in the heck that is, we don't know, and we may not know before the election. And they're running some pretty bad, misleading ads, but they're at least taking on Beshear. And I think you can look at the results in West Virginia and see that the people of America are very unhappy with incumbents generally. And you're going to have a much smaller turnout in this race than the polls will indicate. You know, typically a poll will say, you plan to go vote. If they say probably, they get polled. Well, 75 or 80% of the people who say probably are not going to go vote in an election like this. The turnout model of these polls is probably something on the order of 50 or 60%. The real turnout will be less than 30%, I think. So we'll have a closer result. I don't think David Williams is going to win, but the effect of a closer result would be that Steve Beshear loses the expectations game. He does not get the sort of mandate that he tells people he wants. Of course, he's not standing for anything, so it's hard to say what he'd get a mandate for. But it also may have some impact on whether or not David Williams remains president of the Senate. You know, if he suffers a historic loss, that will add fuel to the fire in the Senate to have a new president. And John David and I talked earlier about this, and we actually agreed that the most likely outcome is that he gets one more leadership cycle. He gets one more General Assembly, full session and short session, and then he's out because, you know, he's basically burned his bridges.
I'm just going to kind of respond to this, and then maybe we throw it open for questions. Al is right about one thing. It's tough for legislators to become good executives. Case in point, Senator Barack Obama. I think West Virginia shows why this race is over. There, the Republican candidate had virtually no negatives to overcome. And unlike Williams, who we know has huge negatives to overcome, the National Party poured in a ton of money on that race, and yet the gap did close, but it wasn't at 30 points a month before the election, no, like Kentucky is. The other
that was 3 months before.
The other fact is, in Kentucky, it is virtually impossible for a Republican to win a statewide race unless the party is united. With the Democrats having about 1.6 to 1 registration advantage now, you've got to have a united party. David Williams does not have that. He has divided the party, and here's what I mean by that. The Tea Party sorts don't trust him because over his career he has voted to increase some taxes. Sometimes I think wisely so, but today that just does not go, and that alienates a good portion of the party. And yet in Louisville and Lexington, solid establishment Republicans are constantly coming up to me and saying, well, they'll read a column where I'm supportive of Williams, even though I disagree with him on the expanded gambling issue. They'll just say, I can't be for him. It's all on the gambling issue. So he's lost that aspect of the establishment wing of the Republican Party. And with those negatives that were built up over decades before the Courier-Journal became irrelevant. He can't afford to lose any Republicans, but yet he has lost them. Plus, there's no reason for any Democrat to really desert Bashir. They can't go anyplace else and be comfortable. And really, face it, after Paul Patton's second term, his first term was pretty impressive. His second term was a failure. The Fletcher administration was largely a failure, I would contend, in large part because of how a partisan Democratic Attorney General, Greg Stumbo, chose to handle a situation, the hiring situation that Fletcher's own missteps gave him an opportunity to handle. Kentuckians may just be happy that they've got a governor that has been adequate, for a term with no scandal. Quickly, I would just say a word about the down ballot races. The race for Attorney General is widely watched. Todd People versus Jack Conway. I can't imagine why anyone would vote for Jack Conway. As soon as he was elected Attorney General, he began running for another office. He ran a horrible campaign for that office. Everyone knows he doesn't want to be Attorney General. Everyone knows he wants to do something else. But, he's been the Democratic dreamboat for so long, they just can't shake the habit, and he may win because of name recognition. Republicans are really raising some questions about the people campaign strategy. He is focusing more on Obama than on Conway. Some people think that may not be the best approach. I understand from Republican polling that People is within striking distance. The other really interesting race for Agriculture Commissioner, virtually everyone who's candid will admit the Republican Jamie Comer's a better candidate than the Democrat Bob Farmer, but Farmer's going to be on the ballot under R. Farmer, Agriculture Commissioner, but that may not be an asset anymore because, while the media has really gone after Richie Farmer for penny ante corruption like refrigerators and television and hotel stays, they've turned a blind eye, to Jerry Abramson's just hundreds of thousands of dollars of questionable expenditures and a really sorry last term with his cabinet secretaries being indicted and being in all sorts of scandals. But you can't say anything bad about Jerry Abramson in the Metro press. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the two, what I would call the Tea Party races, Secretary of State race, Bill Johnson versus Allison Lundergan Grimes. Oh my. I think it's going to be, it could be a situation that starts out from name recognition, Allison Lundergan Grimes, that's a little frightening. And then Bill Johnson, I think I know Bill Johnson. Everybody knows Bill Johnson. That's right. If you don't know that Bill Johnson, you know some Bill Johnson. But she's going to start pouring money in, and if it doesn't get lost in the clutter, they've all really kept their powder dry, and this next month is going to be just Armageddon on the airwaves. Then the auditor's race, where I, a Republican, will tell you that I'm voting for Adam Edelin, the Democrat, because the Republican John Kemper I just don't think you can be auditor when you're in bankruptcy on a personal basis. And that's not to say he's a bad person. But again, in the polling that Ryan Alessi's operation did a month or so ago, those races were really close. And again, I think it's a situation of, Adam Edelin. What's an Adam Edelin? And then, but Kemper, isn't there an insurance company named Kemper? Kemper sounds like